Hello everybody and welcome to this PD on demand session for GoGuardian. If you would like to get a copy of this slideshow for yourself, you can use the link at the bottom of the screen there, bit.ly/GoGuard21. So just go ahead and use that short link right there and you can get this whole slideshow. So let's go ahead and dive in. So welcome again, everybody. My name is Dan Neeson. I'm the Technology Integration Specialist at NeoNet. My email is dneeson@neonet.org. So if you have any questions after watching this video, feel free to shoot me an email. So let's go ahead and dive into GoGuardian. So here is our to-do list that we'll use throughout our session today. We'll start by importing a class from Google Classroom. Then we'll talk about how we can make scheduled sessions. Then we'll talk about creating scenes. We'll look at all the different things that you can do when you are running a session in GoGuardian. And then we'll finally look at student reports. First question to get acquainted with, of course, here is what is GoGuardian? So this tool lets teachers manage what their students can do on their Chromebooks. So teachers can block websites, force students to open certain websites, chat, and there's a bunch more options that we'll talk about here today. If you want to read more, this link here on slide number 4 will take you over to GoGuardian's website where you can read more about GoGuardian. Now this tool is something that your school administrator, your technology director, would have to set up for you ahead of time to get an account. So it's something that's done at the district or school level, so it's not an individual thing that you'll be doing. And essentially all the stuff that we look at today is all the things that the teachers will be doing in GoGuardian. So let's go ahead and talk about getting logged in first. So to get logged in, as long as your school already has a GoGuardian subscription, all that teachers have to do is go to teacher.goguardian.com, and that will get them logged in. I'm already logged in here, so it already brought me in. Okay. Of course, you can log in with your Google account, Clever, ClassLink, or whatever other account you're using. If you're a Google school, you'll probably be able to log in with your school Google account. Okay. Now, once you're in there, that's all you have to do to get logged in. Once you're in there, then we want to import our Google Classrooms over to GoGuardian. Now, you do also have the option to import students manually, so you can basically upload your own roster if you like. I'll briefly show what that looks like in just a second. But again, lots of teachers today use Google Classroom, and that's kind of the main thing we'll talk about. The one thing I'll also mention about Google Classroom, if you do an import from Google Classroom, you only have to do it once. Every couple of hours, GoGuardian is going to sync with your roster in Google Classroom. So even if you get a new student, a couple weeks from now, that student will be put into this GoGuardian class within a couple of hours as soon as they're added to your Google Classroom. All right, so let's go ahead and pull in a Google Classroom. So I'm going to head over into my dashboard here in GoGuardian. And as we can see from that little picture we had earlier, we can simply click on Import Google Classroom. And then, of course, we can import whatever Google Classrooms that we want. Okay, I already have both of mine imported here, but you would simply click on the checkbox and click Import. And again, that will bring the roster of students over. So now the next thing you can also do, again, if you're not using Google Classroom, you can manually add a classroom by clicking Add Classroom up here in the top right, and you can manually add one this way. I'll just call this example class, pick a subject, put in a description if you like. We'll talk about what scenes are in just a little bit. And then if I click Add Classroom, now it gives me a few different options for adding students into GoGuardian. You can give them a class link, which is kind of the same way as it works over in Google Classroom. Essentially, you give students this unique link. You can send it out to them through email or however else you send out links. And they would simply click on it and log in, and then they would be good to go from there. You can also add students individually, or you can upload a CSV, just simply a Google Sheet or an Excel file, just with one column listing each student's emails down the row. Okay, and that's pretty much what there is to adding students to a class and creating a class. All right, so next thing to talk about here is setting a schedule. So after importing your students, you can set a schedule for GoGuardian to run automatically, which is nice because you don't have to necessarily come into GoGuardian, in the beginning of the day or when the class period starts, and you don't have to necessarily have to remember to come in here and turn on the session over here in GoGuardian. It can automatically start for you, which again can save you a lot of time. So all we have to do is go into the settings menu inside of a classes page and then go into scheduling, and we set our class times. All right, so we'll hop back over here, and I'll just go back to this home page here. And since I just made this example class, we'll just run with this example here. So I'm going to go into this class, then down the left-hand side, we're going to go into settings, and then into scheduling. All right, I'll show that one more time. So back here from the home page, or this classrooms page where I see all my different classrooms, I click on any one of them. In this case, I'll click on this example class. Then once I'm in there, I go to the left-hand side and go find settings, and then scheduling in the top middle. Okay. Then from here, I can add my schedule. And if you have class periods Monday through Friday at the same time, it's really easy to add in your class periods. Honestly, even if you have different times, if you have classes that don't necessarily meet every day, or they don't meet at the same time every day, you can adjust this stuff really easily from here. Okay. So for example, I'll just say I have a somewhat normal schedule here, and we meet every day of the week here. And let's say our time is from, I'll do it so it's actually open. So it's about 1 o'clock here. So I'll do 1 p.m. until 2 p.m. That sounds good. Now I'll click Add Schedule. Okay, so just like that, I have my scheduled sessions. And again, the whole purpose of doing this is so GoGuardian will automatically launch this session, and we're able to start tracking what students are doing. We'll get all that data in their reports, and we'll also be able to do scenes as well. Again, we'll talk about what scenes are in just a moment. Okay. Now if I go back here, again, we'll come back to our home screen. I can set different times, set different schedules for each of my different classes, and again, I can set them to whatever I'd like. You can also find all of your schedules over here on the left-hand side under Calendar. This is just another view to be able to see all of your schedules. So you can see I have my different classrooms here. You can see when I have them listed for their different times. Okay, and of course you can still edit from here. So if I want to change a time for this example class, I can still go into Edit and change out whatever I'd like from here. Okay, so again, there's multiple ways to do the same thing. All right, and here's a little picture of, again, what that looks like. So again, go into Settings and Scheduling, and then of course you can set your times for whatever you'd like. So now let's talk about scenes. So this is probably one of the most useful things about GoGuardian. So scenes allow you to allow or disallow certain websites for students. AKA, it's like a whitelist or a blacklist. So a whitelist, you can basically give students a list of specific websites they're allowed to go to. It would block everything else. Or you can do a blacklist, where they have access to pretty much the whole internet except for specific sites that you decide to block. Okay? You can apply scenes across multiple classrooms, and you can find the scenes button on the far left side to set these things up. You'll also be able to change scenes on the fly during a session, right when you're in the middle of things, so you can change them up live whenever you'd like. So let's head over here, and I'm going to go over to scenes over here on the left-hand side. And as you can see, there's two different types. On the left-hand side, we have our allowed scenes. On the right-hand side, we have our blocked websites. Okay. As you can see, under allowed, I have two allowed website lists already created, two whitelists, if you will. I have one called Classwork and one called Quiz Time. So these kind of serve different purposes. I made these in advance. So Classwork, these are basically just a list of websites that I want to allow students to go to while we're doing classwork. Everything else would be blocked that's not on this list. For Quiz Time, this is an even smaller list that I made for my students that essentially says you can go to this website and this website to go take your quiz, and that's it. Everything else would be blocked. Okay. Over on the right-hand side, we have our blocked list. I have a couple of examples here. This first one is called No Distractions. This one I just have set up to block all social media, so they can't go on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or any of that sort of stuff. And of course, we can also block any other common sites. Again, whatever issues that you guys have, of course, you may run into kids that go to ESPN a lot and they get off task there. You can just block that whole website. Okay. So, again, there's two kinds of scenes. There are your allowed websites and your blocked websites. And again, you can make as many of these as you like, and whichever ones that you make, you can apply to whatever classrooms that you like, and you can change them on the fly. So let's go ahead and take a dive into creating your allowed sites. So we start by creating a list, and we'll name it and pick a color. So let's hop back here real quick. And again, we'll start over here on the left-hand side, and we'll do allowed websites list. So I'm going to go ahead to create list, and I'll give this a name, and maybe I'll call this in class work whitelist. Okay, and I can add a description if I'd like. I can change the color here. It's just the color is just for a visual, just so you can easily tell what it is. So maybe I'll make this one purple. Then I come up to the top right and click Next. Now from here, I'm going to put in whatever websites I want to block. Now, one thing to note. A lot of schools, of course, have their own internet filter that's is global for the whole network for the school. This works basically within that filter. So if a website is blocked from your whole internet filter that your school has, if you try to whitelist it here, it's still not going to be allowed. Okay, the internet filter that your school has basically essentially overrules what you do here in GoGuardian. All right, so again, if there is a website that's blocked from your internet filter from your school, and you try to whitelist it or allow it over here, it's still going to end up being blocked for students. Okay. So let's go ahead and actually make a little allowed list here. Again, a whitelist, if you will. So for example, if I want to do Google Classroom, I'll type in a few keywords. I can search the whole name. I can put in the whole URL here if I'd like. And when I do search, it's going to give me all sorts of results here that are related to whatever I searched for. And we can add whatever items that we want. So I can scroll through and I go, okay, I'll go ahead and add Google Classroom. Notice this little pop-up comes up here that says students may be redirected to additional websites when they go into this site. So yeah, I should probably allow them to go to accounts.google.com. Oh, okay, that sounds good. I'll go ahead and do that too. And next one here is docs.google.com. All right, so they can go into Google Docs. That's fine. I can allow them to do all these different things. Okay, so I can add whatever items I want. I can allow them to go to Quizlet and Gmail. Maybe I don't want them to go to YouTube, so I'll allow them to go to Khan Academy, but maybe not Gmail. And now we can see anything that's in this list over here on the right-hand side is going to be allowed. A couple other things about this little list over here on the right-hand side. You'll notice there's a couple of buttons above it. The first one here called Quick Lists. These are little pre-made lists or groups of websites that you can basically group together so you don't have to go do as much searching in that little box on the left-hand side. So here are just some pre-made things that GoGuardian just themselves have made. So if I want to just allow all of Google, all of G Suite, I can just click on the little checkbox. I can even click on the drop-down and decide which things that they're allowed to open here. But again, I can just allow the whole thing and add that as well. You may also start to notice some quick lists made by your district. So your GoGuardian administrator would also be able to make some quick lists as well. So just as a way to save a little bit of time, make these different groups of websites that you could block or allow. Okay. Next one over here is advanced filtering. Essentially, what this can do is it lets you create like a specific type of exception. So, like it says here, if you want to if you want your students to have access to all of Google's sites during instruction except for Google Sites, I could essentially allow all of a whole domain except for a tiny little part. Okay, so this is kind of how you could do that. Okay. Then once we have our list all set here, you can see I have, from this little number here, I have 33 allowed websites in this scene that I created. So those are the only websites. Those 33 are the ones that kids can go to. All the other websites in the world will be blocked. Now, if I notice at the bottom here, we can even create a tab limit for students. It's kind of one of those nice little extra things that GoGuardian does. So I can come over here and do this little drop down, and I can decide how many tabs they can actually physically have open on their Chromebook when they are in a GoGuardian session with me. So if I wanted to limit them to only 3 tabs, that's the max they can have open at a time, I can limit them just to that. Okay. So again, that's pretty much what there is to creating a allowed scene. Once I'm done, I can go ahead up to the top and click on Save. And now I have this one created. It's called In-Class Work Whitelist. That's the one I just created. All right. So again, that's how we do allowed sites. Again, anything that you put on that list will be allowed. Anything that's not on that list would be blocked. Okay. And again, there's a little bit more, there's a little picture rather for what that will look like for you. Now, on the other side, of course, we have blocked sites. So the setup for this is almost exactly the same as we just saw for allowing sites. It's just kind of the opposite. So this list that you make here, these will block specific sites instead, of course, of allowing specific sites. Okay, so these are great things. This is a great tool to use if you are always seeing kids on websites that they're not supposed to be on, social media, so on and so forth. All right, and let's go ahead and make a quick little blocked scene here. So let's go over to the right-hand side. We're going to do create a list under blocked, and yeah, I'll just call this one no social media. Change the color to whatever I want. Maybe I'll do a red this time. And put in whatever items that we want. Maybe I want to block TikTok. Go ahead and do a search, and I'll block TikTok. I'll block Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, Netflix. Maybe I'll let them have YouTube, block Pokey, Discord, Disney Plus, all those different things that they can mess around with. Maybe I'll search for Hulu too. Don't want them just watching TV in there. Block Amazon. Block Spotify. There we go. All right, and just like before, again, over on the right-hand side, we'll see this little scrolling list of all the sites that we are now blocking. Now, of course, up here at the top, we still have our quick list. It's the exact same thing we saw earlier. By the way, you can create your own quick list here at the bottom. So if you want to just make one for yourself, that you could share with other people as well. You can do the same thing. Okay, that would be shared between other teachers that are also using GoGuardian in your school. Now, the one thing you may have seen that wasn't in the other type of scene was this one here called Auto Open Tabs. So with this, we can add a website that we want to automatically open on your student's device when you apply this scene. So if I want them to everybody to automatically go to classroom.google.com, I can add that to their auto open. So as soon as a session starts, as soon as the scene is enacted, it's going to make them automatically go to Google Classroom. Okay. You can also actually do the same thing in the allowed list. It just looks a little bit different. I'll jump back and show you what that looks like in just a second. Okay. But again, you notice it's pretty much the same setup here when we're blocking websites. Okay. Again, you can still do the same thing here down here at the bottom where you can set a tab limit as well. Okay. And with that set, let's go ahead up to the top and click on Save. Now we have a bunch of different items all set. Okay. Let me just show you real quick how we can go in and edit a scene that we already made, and I'll also show you how you can auto open tabs for an allowed list. So let me go back into this in-class work whitelist here. If I give it a click, it'll just jump me right back in to this page, so I can still add more scenes if I'd like, or add more websites rather if I'd like. Okay. The only thing I have to do here to auto open a website for students when this scene is applied is we'll have the auto open button over here on the right hand side next to each individual site. Okay. Of course, you probably don't want to pick too many because then It might kind of slow down their computer if they're opening 4, 5, 6 tabs at once. But again, if I want them to maybe open up Gmail and open up Khan Academy automatically every time I launch this scene, that again can save me a lot of time. All right, so there is our different scenes. Again, you can create these whenever you like. You can make all sorts of different ones, and you can use them across all your different classrooms. All right, so like I said before, regardless of if you are using the block list or the allow list, you can use those quick lists like I talked about. Again, those are common websites that some of them were made by GoGuardian. Again, you can make them for yourself, and then the other teachers that are in your school would be able to use the same list that you make, or vice versa. Okay, again, there's a little picture of what the quick lists look like. So with all that set up, scheduling and setting up our scenes, those two things, then we're pretty much ready to run a session. So whether you schedule them or not, you can run a session when you're ready. So once launched, it will take a few seconds to see students all pop up on your screen, and students do need to log in with their school Chromebooks and have to be logged in with their school account to be able to be in the session. Most school-issued Chromebooks only allow students to use a school login, so they have no choice but to log in with their school account into the Chromebook. Okay, just so you know, students could actually use other devices. They don't have to technically be using a Chromebook. They could be using a MacBook or a PC as long as they're signed into the browser, into the Chrome browser with their school account. When they do that, it will still technically work, but they would still have free reign over the rest of the computer. When we're doing this on a Chromebook, it kind of locks things down a bit more. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about actually running a session. So let's go ahead and jump in. I'm going to my Classrooms tab here. And so, of course, all we have to do to run a session is, again, we have two options. We could schedule it like we did earlier, and then it's just going to run actively for whatever time that you set it to. Or, again, you have the option to just start a class whenever you like. Okay, so if I'm ready to start a class, all I have to do is click on the Start Class button down here at the bottom. Again, if you have a class scheduled already, you'll see a little banner across the top where my mouse is up here. It'll just have like the time, and it'll tell you what class is currently running that was pre-scheduled already. Okay, so let's go ahead and start the class. Oh, let me do one that actually has students in it. That would make more sense. Here we go. Let's do this one. All right, there we go. And so now as this is loading up, what we're going to start to see students' names pop in. We'll start to see their screens pop in as well in these little boxes. Let me kind of make these a little bit bigger here as they load in. All right, so now we have our students pulled up here. As you'll notice at the bottom of the screen here, I just have 2 students in this example class. Of course, in reality, you'll have more. But of course, here's Andrew Anderson. There's one of my students. There's Chris Cruz. There's my other student. And I can see what pages that they're on in real time. I have a second computer over here. I'm going to actually have this student go over to another website, and you'll see how it actually changes in real time. So on his screen, we can see, oh, he just went over to Flipgrid. On the other student's screen, let's see where he's going to go. Oh, he just is over in Hulu. So all these different changes, all the things that these students are doing, we are going to see happen in real time. Okay, now there's, again, a lot of different things that we can do while we are running a session. So let's hop back over here real quick. The first thing, of course, is we can apply scenes. So again, the scenes are those 2 different types of block or allow websites that we can do. Again, we can turn them on or off on the fly whenever we want. So for example, I can see between my 2 students, Chris Cruz here is off task on Hulu. Andrew Anderson, even though he's on Flipgrid, maybe he's doing an activity for me. But I noticed he also has ESPN open on one of his tabs. So what I can do is I can turn on a scene that blocks those different websites. So if you remember from earlier, I blocked a lot of those sites. So up here in the top right, I can pick whatever scene that I want. So this one I'm going to do under a block website list. Maybe I'll turn on the one I have called No Distractions. So what that's going to do, it's going to block whatever sites are on that blocked list. So we'll notice within a couple of seconds over here on Chris's screen, we have a blocked website. He's trying to look at Hulu, but he just gets a blocked website pop-up that he cannot get around. Over on Andrew's screen, even though he's over here on Flipgrid, which is not blocked, you'll notice if he goes over to ESPN, which he was trying to do earlier, it's going to be blocked for him. Again, that's another thing on my blocked list. Okay. Again, I can change these scenes up whenever I want. So if I want to change it up and maybe go into the classwork one, that only allows them to go to certain websites and even forces them to open a certain website. So if you remember from earlier, I wanted them to force open Google Classroom. Just like that, I just turned on that scene, and for both of them, they're right inside of their Google Classrooms. And of course, I can start having them work on things right from there. Okay, so again, those scenes that you change, just on this under this little drop down, you can change to whatever scene that you'd like. And of course, you can create a new one on the fly, of course, right here as you go. Or if you want to turn them off, you can turn them off from here and allow them to do whatever. Okay. And let's hop back over here. Next thing here is force students to open or close tabs. So just like we saw, you can force students to open a website that's attached to a scene. So when you turn on a scene, it forces them to open that website. You can also do it manually here. So for example, if I'll click on this little checkbox here to highlight all my students. You could also do this individually for students by clicking on just their own checkbox. For me, I'll highlight everybody. Then we notice this little bar that comes up at the bottom, and we can say open new tab, lock device, unlock device, or exclude from a session. Of course, for this purpose here, I'm going to do open new tab, and I can force them to go to whatever website I'd like. If I want them to go read a specific article, watch a certain video, so on and so forth, I can do that. You'll also notice this extra tab at the top. This is really cool. If you synced this class from Google Classroom, you can force them to open a specific assignment in Google Classroom. So if, for example, I want them to do this Huck Finn versus Tom Sawyer assignment, I can force them to go and open that a specific Google Classroom assignment on their screens. Okay? So just like that, I have the ability to make them open or close whatever I'd like. Okay. I forgot to show you how to close tabs. Let me do that real quick too. So if I see a student off task and I want them to close off a tab, so here I'm looking at Chris's screen and I see, okay, he has his Huck Finn versus Tom Sawyer thing open. Cool, he's supposed to be doing that. He has his Google Classrooms open. That's fine. He has his Google Drive open. But I also see he has Hulu open as well. Of course, I don't want that open for him. I'm going to go ahead and click on close. It closes that tab on his screen. Okay. Same thing over here for Andrew. Even if he's on the page, even if he's actively looking at that page, I can still force close it on him as well. Okay. So if you do close a tab on a student like this, they will still be able to reopen the website if that site is not blocked from your scene, just so you know. I can tell you from what I've heard from teachers, it is a lot of fun to notice when kids are off task and closing a tab on them and just having them look around all surprised and confused about what just happened. From what I've heard, it's a very funny experience. Anyway, so of course you can open or close any tabs for students in a session. All right, next thing here is chatting with students. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. So we can decide to chat with students, a little instant message. So all we have to do for that is we can do this individually with students by clicking on their own section here and going into chat. You could also just click on the little chat icon right there in the corner. It's a little shortcut to get to the same thing. And then I can put in a message for him. And on his screen, he'll get a little pop-up, as you can see right over here. We see a little pop-up on his screen show up that he can then click on. And I'll click on it from here. Okay, and then whatever messages you go back and forth with will be seen there. This is all recorded as well. It's all documented as well. All right. So again, you are able to chat. You can, again, pick specific students to chat with, or if you have chatting on for everybody, again, if I click on the little check mark here, and then just turn on chatting for everybody. Of course, then you can have it on for everybody, and you can have a back and forth conversation with your students through the chat as well. All right, next thing here is screenshotting a student's screen. So let's hop back over here. And so let's say I'm looking at a student and I can see, let me just do another student here. Let's go and pull up something at like off task here. So if a student's, again, like on ESPN, for example. So I see here Andrew Anderson, he's on ESPN, off task. We're not supposed to be on ESPN right now. What I can do is I'll click on the student's page, and then right below, we're going to find the screenshot button. We give that a click. It's saved right to our account under our reports page, and this is basically just going to be documentation of what he was doing at this specific time. So we can see he was on ESPN at 1:33 in the afternoon. Other things you can do, of course, here is you can lock students' devices as well. And so again, this is something you can do for everybody or individual students. All we have to do is click on whichever student or students that we want. Again, single or all students. And from the same little blue bar down here, we'll go to lock device. We can even put in an optional message here. So you may want to say, eyes up front. And we'll click on lock devices, and on students' devices it's going to be locked where they cannot see what's happening on they can't really do anything else on their screen. All right, again, this kind of works better when students are on Chromebooks because it pretty much stops them from using essentially the whole Chromebook. If they're using a PC, it locks the browser but not the other programs on the computer. Okay, and when we're done, all we have to do is unlock a certain student's device, or we can unlock everybody's. So if I want to unlock a certain student, I can click unlock for that particular student. Or again, I can highlight everybody and unlock everybody from that little check mark. All right, other things here, we can turn on off-task alerts. So off-task alerts, you'll find right up here in the top right. Essentially what these do is it's basically monitoring what students are doing, and it's looking at what subject you teach, and it's going, that website probably has nothing to do with science or history or whatever it is. So if I turn this option on, I can configure it with this little settings gear. I can pick whatever subject area this class is for. So if it's a history, social science class, I can also pick the sensitivity, deciding how much time students have before it alerts me. So I can set it to, if they're off task for 15 seconds, I'll get an alert, or 30 seconds, or a minute. So if I leave it on strict there, you'll see a new bar at the bottom comes up that says off task students, Andrew, and he's been off task for 20 seconds. Okay, and it can tell that because he's on ESPN and he shouldn't be on there. Okay, so as you may have noticed, there's multiple ways to keep students on task while they are while they're part of GoGuardian here. Okay. A few other things here. You can also divide students into groups as well. I don't have very many students here. I only have 2. So I can highlight a few of these students, and then I can put them into these different groups. Kind of the point of it is to essentially group students together to give them different rules. So you can like give students of group number 1, let's say, the students of group number 1 you can put into give them like a whitelist scene because they're still working on a test, and then students in group number 2 are already finished with their test and maybe they're allowed to go do more stuff, that sort of thing. Okay, so if you'll just select the students that you want up here in the top right under student groups, you can create groups from here, and again you can give them different purposes. Okay, so if I want to create a custom group, I'll create a new group here. Select my students, and this is maybe I'll say still testing. So you can create groups there, and then again I can kind of move them to different groups, and again give them their kind of different scenes from there. All right. Again, you can also exclude students. So what that means, here, let me kind of clean this stuff up here. So I can exclude students, which means that I can not have the rules of the scene applied to a certain student. So again, if, let's say, we're starting off taking a test, that's the first thing we do for the day, and the test is on the computer, and so maybe we're only whitelisting like the testing website that we're doing, so maybe it's like a Google form or something. So that's the only whitelist item I have. And let's say as a student finishes, I want them to go work on this other activity, over in Google Classroom, or they have to go read an article or watch a video or something like that. So if, let's say, Andrew here, let's say he finishes his test. Let me go ahead and turn on the scene, actually. So let's say it's quiz time. There's our quiz time scene. And so let's say Andrew Anderson here finishes his test. What I can do is I can click on him, and once I go to him, I can exclude him from the rules from this little button here called Exclude Student. And what that's going to do is basically turn off the scene for him, so then he can go around and still go do basically whatever he wants from there. Again, it's still going to be tracking him from there, but it's a way for us to basically allow students to not be subjugated to the rules that everybody else is. Okay, so again, it's a good scenario would be when everybody's doing a test, as soon as a kid finishes, you can turn off or exclude them from the rules of the scene so that they can go work on other things. All right. And then finally here we can view students' timelines. So you'll notice up here in the top we have a few different tabs that go across the top. This first one here, or the second one rather, is timelines. And this just shows a little timeline of the different websites students were on and how long they were on there for. All I have to do is hover over one of their sites, give it a click, and then I can see how long that they were on that site for and for what time period. So I can see, Andrew Anderson here, he was on ESPN. So I can give that a click here. Oh, there we go. And so I can see whatever websites they were on, see what time periods, that sort of thing. Okay. All right, let's go back here. So that's essentially what there is to running a session. A couple of things here just to mention for the logistical side of things. Of course, if you set these things with a schedule, again, it's going to run until the time period ends. So the one thing to kind of consider is you want to make sure it ends when your class period ends, because the rules will stick with students until the session ends. So if they're going to go see another teacher right after you want to make sure your rules end so they're not infringing on the next teacher's class rules. Okay. You can also manually end a session whenever you're done up here in the top right. Again, whether you pre-scheduled it or not, you can click on end session whenever you're ready and go ahead and end the session. Okay. So then, after you run your session, then we look at our student reports. So we can select class and look at the student and see what they've done over the whatever past period of time that we're looking at. So again, down the left-hand side, we're going to go look for student reports. Then under this first drop-down, we'll pick whatever class. We'll pick our student, and we can pick a date range. So if I want to click on the little calendar icon right there, I can pick a specific date range, or there's a few quick options. So if I just want to go quickly look at the past 30 days, then I'll click on View Report. It's going to give me all this nice data here, showing me all the different websites he was on, his top documents, his Google searches, any interventions. The interventions are just what the teacher did. So how many locked screens I did on him, and how many tabs I forced him to open, how many tabs I closed on him, any sites I blocked for him. And this is where I can see all of the screenshots I took for him. I can click on one, and you can zoom in. You can see the time and date for when that was taken. And you can scroll down and see the full detailed browsing history, all the different pages he was on, and they're all time stamped as well. Okay, you can email this to yourself, so you can do an email report or out to your principal or whoever needs it. In the future, GoGuardian has said there will be an option in the future for a PDF download for this. It's not out yet, but you can look forward to having that in the future. All right. So, hey, here is our to-do list now. So we talked about importing a class from Google Classroom. We looked at making a scheduled session. Then we looked at creating our different scenes, whether to allow or block certain sites. And then we also talked about running a session, all the different things that you can do while you are running a session. And we looked at our student reports. All right. So now I would take some time on your end and practice with this stuff. As long as you have a GoGuardian account, you can set up all this stuff as whenever you'd like. So again, if you're a Google Classroom user, I'd recommend just importing right from Google Classroom, so you don't have you don't have to worry about adding students in manually. Again, you don't have to have students in your Google Classroom yet. So if you're new to Google Classroom or you're just starting the school year and you don't have your new students in there yet, again, like I mentioned earlier, GoGuardian does sync the roster of students between GoGuardian and Google Classroom every 2 hours. So it doesn't even so it doesn't matter if you have students in there yet. As long as you eventually add students to your Google Classroom, they'll eventually show up here in GoGuardian. Okay. Again, you can also create a scene of each type. So again, I would practice with creating a allow list and a block list. And you can also set up a schedule for your classes. Again, you can attach a scene to a class that is going to run automatically. You don't have to necessarily be actively monitoring things from GoGuardian. You can still just be teaching like normal. You don't even have to necessarily have GoGuardian open on your computer at all if you have it pre-scheduled. Okay. One last thing I just want to show you real quick. I just thought of here. When you are setting up your class, after you create your different scenes, so remember I made my different scenes here, I can again force a scene to start as soon as a class starts. So if I go into the settings for any one of my classes here, I'm going to go into the edit class page here. And what I want to do is I'm going to look for this default scene option here. And so I can, again, pick whatever scene that I want. That way, again, I can force them to be open a certain website that the scene is attached to. I can have them be blocked from accessing certain sites, that sort of thing. Okay, so if I want them to start the class every time with the scene I call classwork, that's all I have to do for that. All right, then I'll click update. And just like that, my scene is updated. Again, if I have that pre-scheduled, I don't even have to necessarily have GoGuardian open. It'll just run that scene when the time comes. All right, so that's going to bring us down to the end here, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. Again, my name is Dan Neeson. I'm the Technology Integration Specialist at Neonet. There's, again, my email, dneeson@neonet.org. You can get the copy of the slideshow at bit.ly/GoGuard21, all lowercase, by the way. And with that said, thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video.